Listen, hello everyone, Aquanetta Fogel here, and really want to just kind of say, we talk about breaking generational curses, but I'm gonna tell you this: I am down for Jesus and having a relationship with God, but I'm also down for therapy. In order to really truly heal, we're going to need not only our relationship with God, but we're going to need a relationship with therapists, people that are here to help us sift through and identify some of the things that we've been going through. Because in order for us to heal from it, I guess the first step of healing is admitting that we have a problem. And so a lot of times we can't admit that we have problems if we're not able to identify what we're dealing with. And so, yes, having a relationship with God, Jesus, is absolutely needed. We need Jesus, but we need also therapy. And I am an advocate for therapy, having to really kind of, speak with people and deal with, listen, it's Car Chronicles, you guys, so I'm driving. And really, a counselor is really able to help you deal with sorting things out mentally. And even sometimes if you just got to talk it out to be clear. But anyway, I'll just say this because Christians have been so good at masking our issues. And a lot of times we think that our issues is our only problem, but really our issues didn't start with us. I'm pretty sure that someone else in your family has dealt with whatever it is that you're dealing with. Somebody in the family has dealt with it, but probably is not the person to raise up to break it, because that's when we get into generational curse breakers. Generational curse breakers have to be the people that are willing to do whatever is necessary to break it. And here's the thing, I know that I'm called to be that, because what I've gone through and what I've struggled with and my issues, I know that it didn't start with me. Again, may not be able to identify with who else in my family is dealing with it, or who else in my family bloodline. I'm talking about not just dealing with generations before, such as my mother, or generations before her, such as my grandmother. I'm talking about this may be an issue, or some of these issues I'm dealing with may be 5, 10 generations before me. But I'm the one that's now identifying it, seeing it. And I believe that God is allowing me to identify it and see it, and even work with people that are helping me able to sort it out, to be able to identify it, to be able to now not only pray about it, but also take the necessary steps to deal with it, to break it. Because I don't want my children to go through, I don't want my children to struggle with, and I'm pretty sure that they have their own struggles, and they're probably trying to figure out, why am I struggling with this? But again, it didn't start with you, but it can end with you. And so we as Christians, we have gotten so good with just masking our issues with pray about it, give it to the Lord and leave it there. And yes, that's kind of what the church tells us, just give your problems over to the Lord and he'll make it all right. But no, if you really do have a prayer life and you begin to pray about things to God, prayer is communication. It's a dialogue. So if you're talking to God about, help me deal with this issue, or why am I dealing with this issue, he's going to begin to speak back with instructions. He's going to give you some instructions, some things that you're going to have to do in order for this thing to break, or in order for this thing to be made whole or made all right. You have a part too. And a lot of times what God asks us to do is never really something that we want to do. It's never really something that's our preference to say, oh yeah, okay, I want to do that. But no, we must be the one that's willing to do whatever it takes, because I gotta do this, because I don't want my children to deal with this. It needs to stop with me. I don't want to see my children. I don't want to see my grandchildren. I don't want to see my great grandchildren deal with this, and even generations to come. And so every so often, God will raise up one in the family that is called to break the generational curse. but that person must be willing to do whatever it takes. And sometimes, and not even sometimes, most of the time or all the time, in order for it to be broken, God has to take you outside of the norm, outside of what anything in your family, anybody in your family has ever done. And so when you start to step out and do something different than what's been done, then a lot of times you're ostracized, or a lot of times you're talked about. And you know, it's crazy because, you know your family loves you, but you also know that they're whispering behind your back because they're trying to figure out, why is it that she's doing things different? She's not, doing things like us. But again, God can't heal you while you're in it. So a lot of times he has to take you away from it. He has to remove you from it in order to deliver you from it. May sound like I'm rambling, but check this out. In order to be the generational curse breaker, you must be willing to do whatever it takes. And these days and times right now, we need Jesus, yes, but we need Jesus. We need therapy. We need counselors. We need people, professionals who have trained to be able to sort out our brains, trained to be able to help us sort out our feelings, our emotions, our thoughts. And so many people, so many families are dealing with mental health because we have grown up to suppress our feelings, to mask whatever the issue is. Don't let anybody know you're going through that. And that really does something to our brain. It's traumatizing. A lot of us have gone through so much trauma that's coming out. But my thing is, I don't want it for my children. I don't want it for my grandchildren. I don't want it for generations to come. And so I'm willing to be the sacrifice. I'm willing to be the one to do whatever it takes. You can talk about me. You can reject me. You can say all manner of evil against me. But check this out. I'm not doing this for you. I'm breaking this for my children. I'm breaking this for my grandchildren. I'm breaking this so that no one else has to secretly deal with these things. Because you know what? God has raised me up to identify it, to begin to stand up and do what's necessary to break it. And so again, we can say I'm a generational curse breaker, but if you're not willing to go through whatever it takes, which most likely is going to be something very painful, because you're talking about not something that you just dealt with secretly, or an issue you just dealt with, but you talking about breaking something that your great-grandmother or your great-grandfather or your great-great-great ancestors have dealt with, but nobody was raised up and bold enough to stand up and cut it off. It's going to take Jesus. It's going to take a relationship with God, but it's also going to take some counseling, therapy, to be able to work through it. And so I pray that if you are the generational curse breaker, that God will give you the strength you need. If you want to look at a generational curse breaker, it was Joseph. And yes, his life was not easy. But what he said in Genesis 50:20 was, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. And so what the enemy meant for evil, with all that Joseph had gone through in his life, he was willing to be the one to go through it. And what was interesting about Joseph is that out of all that he had gone through, with being rejected by his brothers, thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, lied on by Potiphar's wife, all that he had gone through, the Bible says he didn't cry about anything that he had gone through until it turned back around and he was able to see the purpose. He was able to see his brothers come right back before him in that vision, in that dream. I believe he was able to see purpose, and it caused the tears to come to his eyes. He never cried. He went through it, and he was favored. So I'll tell you this, you'll be favored. You might not be liked by man, or you might not be liked by, you know, your family or whoever it is that you're breaking it for. But you'll be favored by God. Everything that Joseph did, he was favored by God. But when it came to the end, he was willing to be the one to bless his family and break the generational curse. He was able to be the one that God used to save the family. And so I hope this helped. This is Chronicles with Aquanetta Fogel. Be blessed.